Buenas tardes. Vamos a realizar la primera videoclase de salud comunitaria. Les doy la bienvenida. Les agradecería que les digan a sus compañeros, las personas que no se pudieron conectar el día de hoy, pueden hacerlo después. Pues la videoclase, mediante este mismo link, queda grabada. ¿Me podrían confirmar de pronto si me están escuchando? Bueno, les voy a compartir pantalla para que puedan ver las diapositivas. Entonces, teniendo en cuenta que esta asignatura es en segunda lengua, la videoclase se realizará en inglés. Si necesitan de pronto, si tienen alguna duda que necesitan que resuelva en español, me escriben por el chat del curso o mediante un mensaje. Acá en Canvas pueden encontrar el chat del curso por si pues quieren escribir alguna duda. Entonces, pues, en la clase de hoy vamos a hablar de las enfermedades transmisibles, pues la epidemiología de las enfermedades transmisibles, los principios de estas. Bueno, espero que todos me estén escuchando.
Sí, entre semana lo podemos. Clases en para son posgrado, claro, vienen cada 15 días. Pero las otras horas sí toca movernos. O sea, tú me dices yo el lunes puedo.
Ay, Dios mío.
Y el miércoles puedo salir, yo vengo y tú pero el viernes programa. O sea, yo no necesito de 4 de la tarde, de la noche y los sábados. Temprano que yo pudiera sí, claro. Pues digamos que ya diferente para que me quedan no solamente las clases de la mañana, yo voy a intentar el resto de horas entre semana. Ah, bueno, listo. Pero es que en este momento, como estamos todavía fuera, no, es muy difícil decir, no, yo te aseguro que te voy a poner las clases después de las 6. Ahora estamos moviendo fuerte.
Bueno, pues creo, pues ninguno me ha dicho nada. Creo que me escuchan bien. Igual acá la videoclase tiene, a ustedes les aparece un chat en el que pueden también decirme si están pudiendo. A este lado les voy a mostrar, aparece un chat para que me digan. Acá, ustedes ven acá el video y a este lado aparece, hay un chat donde pueden escribirme si tienen alguna duda. ¿Listo? No, bueno, si no es nosotros, pero ahí es. Bueno, vamos a empezar, ahora sí. So today we're going to talk about the principle of communicable disease, its epidemiology. So what we are going to learn in this class, first the definition of epidemiology, then the epidemiology triad, the definition of communicable disease, the importance of study this communicable disease, the terminology, and the dynamics of disease transition. There we're going to talk about the change of infection, the human reservoirs or source, the modes of transition, and susceptible hosts. First definition: the epidemiology is the study of the distribution and determinants of health-related states and events in population, and the application of this study to control health problems. That was defined in 1983. So, the epidemiology triad, o el triángulo de la epidemiología, there we have the host, the agent, and the environment. In the host, we have demographic characteristics, biological and socioeconomic. In the agent, we have biological agents, physical, chemical, some nutrients, mechanical and social agents. In the environment, we have the physical environment, biological, and social environment. For the infection disease model, we have that we need to have these three conditions. First, the host must be susceptible to the disease. Then we need to have the presence of the pathogen, and then the environment will have to be suitable for the presentation of the disease. So the definition of communicable disease is an illness due to a specific infection, could be biological, agent, or is toxic products. Is capable of being directly or indirectly transmitted from man to man, from animal to man, from animal to animal, or from the environment. That could be the air, water, food, to the man. The importance of studying communicable disease epidemiology. First, that allow us to see the changes of the parents of the infection disease. Then we also could see or discover new infection, or we could see also the possibility that some chronic disease have an infective origin. This is the terminology and definition we are going to learn today. First, infection, contamination, infestation, contagious disease, incidence and prevalence, epidemic, endemic, hyperendemic, holoendemic, pandemic, exotic, sporadic, attack rate, primary and secondary cases, zoonosis, epizoonosis, and enzoonotic, nosocomial infection, opportunistic infection, eradication, and elimination. Virulence, reproductive rate of infection, host, vector, reservoir, incubation period, ineffective period, serial interval, latent period, and latent period. Then, first we have infection, that is the entry and development of or multiplication of an infection agent in the body of a man or an animal. And if we have the bacteria of the agent, that doesn't mean that we always have the disease. There are several levels of infection. First is colonization. We all have bacteria in our bodies, in the skin, in, in the nasal pharynx. That is colonization. We have bacteria in our body. Then is the subclinical infection that we have the bacteria, but the bacteria doesn't reproduce to cause the disease. Then we have the latent infection, for example, the herpes virus, when some people can have the virus but they don't have the disease. And the fourth one is that the manifest of clinical infection, when we have the virus of the bacteria and we present the disease. So the second term is contamination, that is the presence of an infection agent on a body surface, on or in clothes, bedding, toys, surgical instruments, or dressing, or other articles of substance, including water or food. That means that any of these objects or food is contaminated with bacteria or viruses. Then is infestation, that is the lodgement, development, and reproduction of the arthropods. Arthropods, if you remember, are like lice, eat mites on the surface of the body or in the clothing. So some lice, eat mites. This term could be also used to describe the invasion to the gut by parasitic worms and like ascaris. Contagious disease. A contagious disease is the one that is transmitted through contact. For example, scabies, trachoma, STD, and leprosis. Host is a person or an animal that affords substance or lodgement to an infection agent under natural conditions. The natural conditions types include an obligated host, that is the definite host, intermediate host, and transport host. So, like the mosquito that has the bacteria to cause malaria, that is the obligated host. The bacteria does the parasite doesn't reproduce it is it the if is if it and if it doesn't have the mosquito. And some like transport hosts like the rats that only transports the bacteria or the parasite. Vector of infection is an exen or any laying carrier that transports an infection agent from an infected individual or is waits to a susceptible individual or its foods or intermediate surroundings. Both biological and mechanical transmission are encountered. The reservoir, any person arthropod, plants, soil, or substance or combination of these in which an infection agent normally lives and multiplies, on which it depends primarily for survival, and where it reproduces itself in such a manner that it can be transmitted to a susceptible host. It is natural. It is the natural habit of the infection agent. Incidence and prevalence of the infection disease. Incidence incidence is the number of new cases in a given time period expressed as persons infected per year, or the number of persons times of observation. Prevalence is the number of cases at given time expressed as a person at a given time. Prevalence is a product of the incidence uh, for the duration of the disease and is of little interest in an infection disease is that has such short duration, but may be of interest in an infection disease of long duration. Epidemic. The word epidemic means the unusual occurrence in a community of disease, specific health related behaviors, or other health related events clearly expressed in excess of expected occurrence. Epi means upon and demos people. Epidemics can occur upon endemic states too. Endemic, which refers to the constant presence of a disease or infection agent within a given geographic area or population group. It is usual or expected frequency of disease within a population. The N means in and demos people. So the difference between epidemic that the epidemic is a unusual numbers of cases in a community when we didn't used to see this disease. An endemic, we have Colombia is an endemic place or country for some tropical diseases. Like this means that only in that geographic area we have the presence of the disease. Hyperendemic and holoendemic. Hyper means or express that the disease is constantly present of the high incidence and the prevalence rates and affects a large group equally. And the term holoendemic expresses a high level of infection beginning early in life and affecting most of the child population, leading to a state of equilibrium such that the adult population shows evidence of the disease much less common than do the children. The next one is pandemic and exotic and endemic, usually affecting a large portion of the population, occurring over a wide geographic area, such as a section of the nation, the entire nation, a continent of the world, like the influenza pandemic. Exotic diseases are those which are important into a country in which they do not otherwise occur. For example, rabies in the UK. Sporadic, the word sporadic means scattered about. That means that the cases occur irregularly from the time to time and generally infrequently. The cases are few and separate widely in the time and place that they are shown not or tied or little connection with each other, nor a recognizable common source of infection, for example, the tetanus. However, a sporadic disease could be the starting off point of, a, of, of an when the conditions are favorable for its spread. The attack rates and primary and secondary cases. Attack rate means the proportion of non-immune exposed individuals who become clinically ill. Primary and secondary index cases means that the person who comes into an infected population is the primary case. Those who subsequently contract the infection are the secondary cases. Further spread is described as wave or generation. Zoonosis, epizoonotic, and enzootic. Zoonosis is an infection that is transmitted under a natural condition from vertebrate animals to a man. For example, rabies, plague, and bovine tuberculosis. An episodic is an outbreak epidemic of the disease in an animal population. An enzootic is an endemic occurring in animals. Nosocomial infection. Nosocomial means that the infection was acquired at the hospital. It's an infection that is an infection originate in a patient while in a hospital or another healthcare facility. It has to be a new disorder related to the patient's primary condition. For example, the infection of surgical wounds and urinary tract infection. An opportunist infection, this is the infection by organisms that take the opportunity to provided by a defect in the host defense to infect the host and those cause disease. Eradication and elimination, that means that we determination of all transmission of the infection by the extermination of the infection agent through the surveillance and containment. Eradication is an absolute process and all or none phenomenon restricted to the termination of the infection from the whole world. The term elimination is sometimes used to describe the eradication of the disease from a large geographic region. Diseases which are amenable to eliminate in meantime are polio, measles, and diphtheria. Reproductive rate of infection. Reproductive rate of infection is the potential for an infection disease to spread. Influential factors include the probability of transmission between an infected and a susceptible individual, frequency of population contact, duration of the infection, virulence of the organism, and population immune portion. Eh, For the disease to be present, we have the dynamics of the disease transmission or change of infection. First, we need to have the source, then the modes of transition, then a susceptible host, and if these three conditions complete, we will have the disease or the infection. The source or reservoir is the person, animal, or object, substance from which an infection agent passes or is disseminated to the host. That could be persons, animals, arthropods, plants, soils, or substance, or a combination. in which an infection agent normally lives and multiplies, on which it depends primarily for survival, and where it reproduces itself in such a manner that it can be transmitted to a susceptible host. Is the natural habitat of the infection agent. We have three types of sources. First, the human, animal, and then non-living sources. The human, we have the cases, could be primary cases, index cases, or secondary cases. According to the spectrum of the disease, we have the clinical cases, could be mild, severe, typical, or atypical. Subclinical cases of latent infections. We have some other type that it could also be incubator, convalescence, and healthy. Those are the careers. The duration, temporary or chronic, we always have temporary, we only have the bacteria for a short period, and chronic, like the virus of herpes, we always have it. And the transmission, urinary, intestine, respiratory, or others. Cases is a person in the population or study group identified as having the particular disease, health disorder, or condition under investigation. The carriers, it occurs either due to an inadequate treatment or immune response. The disease agent is not completely eliminated, leading to a carrier state. They have three elements have to occur to form a carrier state. The presence in the body of the disease agent, the absence of recognizable symptoms and signs of the disease, the shedding of the disease agent, and discharge of or excretion. The animal sources could be a zoonosis infection. That could be that it is an infection that is transmissible under natural conditions from an animal to the man. And there are over 100 zoonotic diseases. And the non-living source could be soil, inmate matter, can also act as reservoirs of the infection. For example, soil may hurt and causes tetanus, anthrax, and coccidioidomycosis. Modes of transmission: direct transmission, could be have direct contact, droplet infection, contact with soil, inoculation into the skin or mucosa, and transplacenta, vertical transmission. In the indirect transmission, vehicles, vectors, biological, mechanical, air, fomite, and unclean hands and fingers. What is a susceptible host? It's a person when an infection agent seeks a susceptible host, aiming to successful parasitism. We need to have we have 4 stages are required for successful parasitism. First, we need to have a portal of entry, then the site of election inside the body, 3, the portal of exit, and 4, the survival in external environment. Virulence and case fatality rates. Virulence is the degree of pathogenicity. The disease evoking power of a microorganism in a given host is expressed as the ratio of the number of cases over infection to the total numbers of infected, as determined by immunoassay when the death is the only criterion of severity. This is the case of fatality rate. Then we have the serial interval and infection period. The serial interval is the gap in time between the onset of the primary and the secondary cases, the interval between the recipient of the infection and the maximal ineffectivity of the host. The infection period is the length of time a person can transmit diseases. So the infection day they have to shed the infection agent. Incubation and latent periods. Incubation is the time from the exposure to the development of the disease. In other words, the time that the interval is the interval between invasion by an infection agent and the appearance of the first signs or symptom of the disease in question. Latent period. The period between exposure and the onset of infection is. This may be shorter or longer than the incubation period. So I think the person who will able to connect today, I hope we learned something new today. And if you have any question, you can write through the Canvas interface. I hope you have a great day and have a nice week.